Hi there guys, it's Mike from MCQBushcraft here, and welcome to another video. I've been asked a lot of questions recently about a knife I've been using in some of my more recent videos, and it's this knife that I've got on me just here. This is a fairly new addition to my equipment, although I have been using it for the past 4 months, and to say I'm impressed with it is really an understatement. It's been a fantastic addition to the kit. I've really enjoyed using it. And this is a knife that I designed in collaboration with a UK knife maker called Lee from LB Custom Knives. And I was very lucky to be able to produce it with Lee. Lee is a very highly regarded knife maker over here in the British Isles, and he does a lot of work over in the States as well, producing bespoke handmade knives, and he produces really quite outstanding leather work as well. If you've ever seen his leather work, it's it really is on another level. It's quite impressive to say the least. But this knife's got a bit of a backstory behind it. This is really just a prototype, and I've been testing it for the past 4 months. But Lee contacted me the other day and he told me that something was on its way into the post for me, and I had a good idea of what it was. And although I've really enjoyed using this prototype, I mean, I've really taken it to hell and back. I've given it a beating, and it's been like nothing I've ever really seen before in terms of performance on edge retention, the steel. It's been a beautiful knife, and it will be continued to be used. But I was very excited as I've got the final design here, and here it is. And this is a knife called the Field Master, an absolutely beautiful knife. I couldn't be more happy with it. It's a stunning piece of handmade craftsmanship by Lee, and the performance of it is again there to match. So a beautiful field knife that I'm really going to look forward to adding to my kit and using in the future, and really capable of dealing with conditions in any environment. I'll go into the specifications a little bit later. I'll tell you a bit about the backstory. I was able to talk to Lee, and I told him a bit about what I wanted in a knife, and he said, well, I'm happy to make something with you or design something with you, or if you want to design a knife, I'm happy to run through it with you, and you can come down and work with me, and we'll produce something, which I was really happy with, because he's quite a busy man and his work is very sought after, so I was quite fortunate really. But I gave Lee a call, I went to visit him, and we spent quite a bit of time working on the knife on more than one occasion, detailing it out of drawings and then building it out of wood, making like prototypes, and testing the comfort of them, looking at the shape and geometry. And we eventually, after quite a bit of time, came to produce this, which is the prototype Field Master knife, which he produced for me with steel as well, RWL 34, which is a very high performance stainless steel. When it turned up, I was quite happy with it really, and thought this is time to give it some real beating in the field. And the first time I took it out I had a 2-week course in the torrential rain. Now, no matter how long you spend out in the rain, it always finds a way in. Even if you have the best waterproofs in the world, it will eventually get in, and it will get on your tools, because if you've got to use your tools in the rain, they get wet. You're working with wet wood, you're taking it out of the sheath, you're holding wood with wet hands or gloves, it gets damp, it goes back in the sheath. And if you're using a carbon steel blade and leather, it's a real nightmare to have to maintain it, because you really need to keep on top of it, or else it will rust. And you obviously can't keep it in the sheath at night, or else the sheath will obviously hold the water, being leather, and you'll rust the sheath as well, rust the knife as well. So for me to use this in that kind of environment, which is kind of typical environment that I'm in most of the year, was a breath of fresh air really to begin with, because RWL 34 is very corrosion resistant. One thing I really wanted to test on it was the edge retention and the strength of the blade and the steel. I was familiar with the heat treat. It's had a full heat treat to 59 RC, and it's had a full cryogenic treatment to it, and really it's been in cryogenic treatment in liquid nitrogen as well, so it's really there to give it superior edge retention, really refine the molecules in the steel to give it some very, very good edge retention, which I wanted to test out. So I spent an hour almost each morning before the course began, because it's kind of my job really to get up, get the fire going, make sure everything's running for the course. And To process wood, I put my axe down and just took this knife, and there was some deadfall of oak that had been down for some time, really seasoned. And although the outer was damp, the inside was just this twisted, hard core of oak. If you're ever familiar with oak and you go out into the woods, no matter how old it is, the cores of the oak limbs are always rock hard. It takes a long time to rot, which is why it's such good firewood. But I took the knife and I just battened the hell out of it for an hour each morning, going through knots, deliberately aiming for knots, whacking it against knots, battening the knots and forcing the knife to move through the twists of the grain, just really giving it a hard time in wet weather as well. And I was expecting obviously to have to strop it and address the edge, but after 2 weeks of doing that every morning for an hour, the edge was still shaving sharp, so the heat treat was absolutely astounding, and the performance of the steel was brilliant as well. I mean, with softer steels I wouldn't really dare do that, and I did things with this knife that I wouldn't normally do with knives that I have in my kit, but that's because I really wanted to take it to the edge and back in terms of its performance. One thing I've done with it quite a bit is used it on game. I've prepared large and small game, deer like muntjac and roe, and also rabbits and pheasants and pigeons. I've taken it out and prepared all sorts of game like that, and even deliberately battened the knife through bone, which is something I really don't like doing, especially something I would never do with a Scandinavian grind because they're quite fragile. You'll ruin your edge doing things like that. But again, it handled it perfectly, no rolls or anything at all, just battened straight through the bone without a scratch, and that was something that I was really impressed with. And for me, it's designed to be used across a whole range of disciplines, so it has to do a bit of everything really, which is why we came up with the name the Fieldmaster. And 4 months down the line, the maintenance I've done on it is I've just stropped it once, and that's not because all it really needed was to be stropped once. I would have stropped it more than that, but I really wanted to just not do too much with it and just see how it performed and see what its longevity of the edge was. And it's still shaving sharp, which to me is a testament to the steel, but also to Lee's heat treatment, because he's done an absolutely astounding job even just on this prototype here that was for me to test out. And it's been a pleasure to use, it really has. To be on the coastline, which I took it away with me to do some fishing on the coastline, and I was camping out down there, caught some smooth hounds like a type of shark, just opened the fish up with ease. You know, really nice to use on flaying fish and skinning and preparing game and preparing food and chopping mushrooms and going out and foraging and just slicing food. It's just it's been really nice, and it really has spoken for itself in its use for me, which I'm really happy with. Obviously not having to worry about salt water. I left it in a bucket of salt water for 2 days and didn't have a spot of rust on it, so you know, a good steel for corrosion resistance. But the actual final design has a few changes, nothing really too substantial, but the basics of it are it's RWL 34 again, so that's a very high-end performance stainless steel. It's been hardened to 59 RC, has full cryo treatment to give it superior edge retention, which really needs to be done with this kind of steel. We've got a stonewash finish on the top of the spine and on the rear portion of the blade where it meets the scales, and a brushed finish on the actual blade, which is really just for aesthetics because it looks much nicer and it ages a little bit better like that. It's a full flat grind with a secondary bevel. The actual thickness of the steel is 3.6 millimeters. It does taper down because of the nature of the full flat grind, but the majority of the blade 3.6 millimeters. It has jimping along the top, and the jimping is really mild jimping, so not pronounced very large knobs on the top like you kind of see on some knives, but this jimping is more like a bit of a file. It does help you do some scraping as well on a ferro rod, although the 90-degree spine does a good job of that as well. But the jimping really locks your thumb against the blade, and if you try and slide your thumb up and down, it just literally locks it in position. So it's very functional. I really like the jimping on this one. And the scales are linen micarta, black on brown, and they're removable as well. And you also have a lanyard hole. But overall, it's a very nice knife, and you do have a small choil there as well, so you can actually sharpen all of the blade. But I'm blown away with it. Really beautiful knife, and very functional in the field, which is, for me, is the main thing. And obviously it comes with a Kydex sheath as well. We've got this Kydex sheath here, which is compatible with a tech lock. As you can see on the prototype, it's got a tech lock on it. I've got another tech lock coming for this final one, because I would like to keep a tech lock on them both, really, because the prototype can still be used by the people that I'm with. One thing I'll probably be asked is, Mike, you're a bushcrafter, why not a Scandinavian grind? Why did you design a knife without a Scandinavian grind? And I suppose I'm perceived as someone in the bushcraft world doing bushcraft and teaching it and stuff, and so therefore, you know, the knife of choice for me should be a Scandinavian grind. And I've used Scandi grinds, I own quite a few, and I do use them, and I really enjoy using them. It's a really nice grind, performs beautifully on wood. But really for me, bushcraft is a sort of modern word now, brought over here, and there's kind of a lot of commercial status held with it, and the Scandi grind has kind of like a celebrity status in under the word bushcraft. And I think a lot of the time you can go on bushcraft courses and you can speak to other people who do bushcraft skills, and you'll say to them, what knife should I buy? And they'll go, Amora, you know, you just need a Scandi grind, and they won't really tell you why. They'll just tell you that's what you need, and then that information just kind of carries on through repetition without kind of too much understanding behind it. For me, bushcraft skills are about all wilderness living skills. You know, things like whittling wood and carving are part of it, and construction and crafts, and there's also preparation of food, hunting, trapping, fishing, preparing game, filleting fish, making various things and preparing animal hides, slicing and preparing food out in the field, and foraging and slicing things up, and doing all manner of things like that. You know, bushcraft is sort of encompasses lots and lots of different skills, you know, and amongst all those core things like food and game and fishing and whittling, that there are a myriad of other subjects as well, like various plant materials and fibres. You can just go on and on and on, and the more you kind of get into all of that sort of stuff, that the more the tools you carry have to be versatile. So the Scandinavian grind is a very fragile grind, really. That the reality of it is it's a very fragile grind. Really nice on wood, and it excels at carving. That's why you see a lot of carving knives with a Scandi grind on them. If you get quite a thin Scandi grind, you know, they can be quite versatile as well, but you do suffer other compromises with that. But if you've ever tried preparing game with them, working with bone, flaying a fish and filleting a fish, they're particularly clumsy and generally quite fragile, and prone to dulling when using them for those kind of things, especially if you come into contact with very hard things like bone, either by mistake or deliberately, because of the nature of the grind. It's quite fragile. There may be people out there that argue, you know, a knife should never roll and it shouldn't chip, and you know, knives will. It's a piece of steel with a really fine edge on it. If you put it against something hard, it will roll, and if you don't address the roll will eventually move back and forth and it can chip. And I've owned some real high-end knives from top knife makers with top of the game heat treats. They still roll if you don't use them right, or if you do something or make a mistake with them, or put them on something really hard. And the Scandi grind is just unfortunately very fragile, and you know, if you skin an animal and you hit a bone, it's, you know, you're going to roll it, and that's really it. And for me, this grind is just ultimately stronger. The full flat is really, for me, a field grind. You know, you see it a lot on a lot of field knives that are designed to do a range of different things. Because of the nature of the grind, it's got very tough edge retention, but it's also quite thin in its profile, and it slices very well. It's very good for skinning, brilliant for opening up fish and filleting fish, and it does very, very well with wood as well. You know, you can get some really shallow angles on it and make feathers that are so thin you can see through them. And it's a really good grind for doing a variety of different things, and it's pairable with harder steels and more high-tech steels like this particular one here. So that's the reason I didn't design a knife with a Scandinavian grind. If I did, it wouldn't be any different to anything that's already out there, and it wouldn't be any different to anything that I've used before or own. And the thing is I'm kind of moving away from those sorts of knives because I'm quite tired of looking after them, if I'm quite honest. For me, whacking sparks off the back of a carbon steel knife has never really been something I've done too often. I've done it a few times, and it's never been something I've done because I've needed to, but I carry an axe that's made of carbon steel anyway, and I could just bash that, or maybe off of a saw blade or some other piece of steel equipment that I carry. But if you just work with wood, then there's no reason why you would want anything else. The Scandinavian grind is quite superior in that respect, and just much nicer to work with. I've got some nice carving knives with a Scandi grind on, and they're really thin, and you can just almost just rotate circles of wood out with them. They're so fine, you know, it's really quite impressive. You know, something that other grinds would find pretty difficult. But one thing I asked of Lee was, would he produce more of these if anyone else wanted them, because it's a great knife and I thought other people could benefit from it. And he was a bit reluctant at first, but he has agreed to, and he's not going to be producing them as like a regular production like his other knives. It's more of something he'll trickle out every now and then when he has time to. Based on our agreement, I hosted all the admin stuff on my website. When they're available, I'll update the stock on the website and obviously notify people that it's available. And he's not taking orders for it, it's just first come first serve to make it fair for everyone, because if he ends up taking orders, he doesn't enjoy that kind of thing and gets backlogged, and it stops him getting on with the other things he wants to get on with. So this knife will be available for other people if they want it, and you will find it on my website, and you'll see a link below in the description. They're being made as this video is produced, and when they're ready I'll update the stock on the website, and whoever wants one can obviously own one. I mean, the price, it's not cheap at all, but if you're into custom knife builds out there, you'll realise that with the price of the materials to build this, and the fact that it's completely handmade by Lee, you know, no jigs, no water jetting, no parts arriving pre-made, he does it all by hand, then you'll appreciate that it is a piece of art, functional piece of art, made by one of the top knife makers in the UK, from materials that pretty much make up the third of the cost of the knife. You know, the steel alone costs a fortune really to build this. It's a very, very expensive steel, RWL34, but that's what makes it special. You know, that's why really I wanted it to be what it was. So it's £300 for the knife. It's very expensive, but originally it was made for me. You know, I didn't sort of go on a commercial venture to build a knife and become a millionaire, because there is no financial gain in it for me. It's a knife that I'm happy I've got, and it's suited for me. But if anyone else does similar things to me and wants a knife like this, then it is available for you out there, and you'll find them on my website. So I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I hope it's answered the question of this knife appearing in many videos. I know a lot of you have asked me, and I've had a lot of messages about it, so hopefully this has put that to rest, and you'll be seeing this one on my belt in future videos. So thanks again for watching, and please see the links below. Do follow Lee on Instagram as well. I'll put those links in the description. He's regularly updating things on Instagram, and you'll get an idea of when these things will be ready by his Instagram feeds, because he does daily feeds on how his productions are going. And thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoy future videos, and I'll see you very soon in another one. So take care guys, and thank you again.